Good morning. So, I follow James Damore, Jamesa. His middle name starts with A, so James A. Damore, Damore. He became well known because he wrote a document that circulated at Google, which talked about the biological differences between men and women, and basically theorized or suggested that the biological differences between men and women might help to explain why there is not a 50-50 split in men and women in the workplace at Google. So basically, he said, guys are more interested in things and they're driven by competition and status, and women aren't in general, which is it's not to say that when you look at the average, that's different than looking at individuals. So that's important to remember. But James Damore did an interview where Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People, I think it's Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion, or Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. And so I bought Jonathan Haidt's book, and I've read through the first part, and I do think I'm going to read through this book more than once because he refers to different studies and different people and statistics, and results from those studies, which, I think would be good to commit to memory. It takes me about 3 times to really commit something to memory, so I might end up reading this thing 3 times. But in part 1, Jonathan Haidt basically says that moral intuition is a primary force. It is a fundamental force. It is the mental activity that has evolved within the human mind and is more powerful than moral reasoning. That's the basic supposition, proposition, suggestion. He says that that moral intuition evolved. The circuitry in the brain evolved long before human language, and that moral reasoning is based in human language, and it evolved and serves moral intuition. I prefer to think of it as belief, moral intuition as belief, but maybe belief is a combination of those two, moral intuitions and moral reasoning. But there's a lot of studies that are referenced to provide evidence for his model. He has a model, an intuitionist model for how morals develop and propagate between people, basically in a culture or society. And I think he does a pretty good job. And the thing to remember is that, or the thing I try to remind myself, is that these studies look at a population, and there's trends and patterns across the population, and of course there's anomalies. There's weird people, and weird is actually an interesting word in reference to Jonathan Haidt's book, because weird is an acronym, which kind of, I think, so W is for Western, I think the I is for individualist, I think, and the D is for democratic. But weird people in general I think they're kind of libertarians. The most weird people in the world are very libertarian, but those are not the norm, the normal human being, and that's the thing to remember if you listen to James Damore, is that he's not talking about individuals, and he points out that people who get hired by Google are not average normal people, and so I remind myself of that as well whenever I read through these studies. And so I tend to understand my own mind. I can relate and see the moral intuition, the confirmation bias, the study in these, and I read these studies and I can say, yeah, I can see how the truth applies to me. And then there's this moral reasoning, and the studies show that very few people actually use their reasoning skills to, I call it, in my practice, to be skeptical of their own beliefs. Very few people question their own beliefs. And I would say personally, it's a challenge to question your own beliefs. Even though I've practiced doing it, I'll find myself often saying, hey, have I even questioned that belief that I have? Do I question my immediate reaction to any situation or experience? And so that's my practice. So I'm one of those anomalies when it comes to morals. But in general, the average human being is not an anomaly. They tend to be someone who acts without reason, that has acquired moral intuitions through their culture, through their family, their microculture, through their experiences, and they don't really question those moral intuitions. And so just to kind of wrap this up, I'll bring it back to my own moral issues that I think are very important, and I'll try to compare it to, for example, slavery in the United States. At some point, there were people who thought that slavery was moral, and so their intuition, their non-reasoning mind, their intuition was that it was moral, and then they would use their reasoning mind to justify the practice of slavery, and they never practiced questioning their own belief, their own moral intuition. And that is the natural state of human beings on average. The majority of people are this way. And we still have this, immoral intuitions and beliefs today. And perhaps we will always have immoral intuitions and beliefs. And it is I would say, a noble effort to attempt to help people recognize that which is the most immoral intuition and belief in society today. And so I think Jonathan Haidt tries to give us some tools to speak to that subconscious mind where the moral intuitions arise. And he also pointed to a book by Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I bought that one as well. But to me, one of the biggest immoralities within the United States or within Western societies is that we lock people in cages for growing plants. And I like to phrase it that way. And so that's just one. I'm sure there's many others, but it's the one that impacts me the most because my religion is based around plants. And so people who want to lock people in cages, people who want to lock you in a cage for growing a plant, are immoral. And that moral intuition that it is wrong to grow and consume and sell the cannabis plant or psilocybin mushrooms or ayahuasca brew or ibogaine root. You know, I mean, you can keep going. That moral intuition that says that is wrong, is based on deceptions propagated by the government decades ago, and basically, I remember even whenever I was a kid, the DARE program would come into our class and spread lies about the cannabis plant, for example. And maybe it wasn't all lies, but it was half-truths. So it wasn't the whole truth. For example, the cannabis plant could be a gateway drug, so you need to be careful. The cannabis plant can be dangerous for a developing mind, so be careful. The cannabis plant can be dangerous for people with schizophrenia. There's different strains of the cannabis plant that impact people differently, and so it is something to be cautious about. But there are people who can benefit from the use of the cannabis plant, and there are a lot of people who can benefit from the use of the cannabis plant, so long as they do it in a respectful way that attempts to understand the information regarding the different strains of the plant, which have different compositions of cannabinoids, and how certain doses can have an impact in their life depending on their needs, their medicinal needs. So that's it for today. I'll keep reading this book and talk to you later.